Good afternoon, everyone. Can someone tell me whether my voice is clear? And I hope the screen is also clearly visible to all of you. आवाज आ रही है सबको? Is my voice clear? Okay, chalo. So we were talking about a lot of things, especially in the previous session we talked about rural financial institutions. Okay, so from here onwards we'll focus on 2 to 3 main things in today's session. So we'll try to focus on that with respect to Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of India. What has been the impact of this code, especially in the previous year? That is what we're going to see in today's session. Apart from that, we'll also see about capital markets. What has been the trends with respect to capital markets, especially in the primary market as well as in the secondary market. And if the time persists, then we'll also try to do, give me a sec, we'll also try to do mutual funds. The mutual funds, what has been the trends, that also we'll try to do in today's session. Chaliye. Okay, so first thing first, efficacy of the solvency law, which is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of India. The economic survey talked about various things via which we'll be able to identify whether that law was successful or not. Okay, so first of all, in order to understand the efficacy of this law, you have to understand how or with what motive this law was established in the first place. So as all of you know that resolution of these insolvency processes used to take a lot of time. So we wanted to establish a particular law that is totally dedicated to this process. Okay, so in this case, if you see whether the timeline with respect to resolution as well as the frequency and the amount of or the number of corporate debt that has been resolved, that will determine the efficacy of this law. So if you see the performance till September 2024, resolution plans approved under Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code were 1068. So brief, I hope all of you understand that what do you mean by resolution plans. For example, if a particular company is, let's say, bankrupt, then all the creditors of this company will take this company to the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of Board of India. This Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India will appoint an resolution professional. This resolution professional will make a resolution plan that will be acceptable to these creditors. This plan can talk about how to, take out the maximum value of whatever assets that are still left. So when we say resolution plans approved under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, we are talking about such kind of plans. I hope this is clear. So in this financial year till September, 1068 resolution plans have been approved till now. Here the creditors realizing 3.6 lakh crore, 161% against liquidation value and 86.1% of the fair value. Liquidation value, basically if you just liquidate all the assets that a particular company has and whatever value that you receive, okay, the resolution plan, if you follow that resolution plan, you can get 161% of that liquidation value. So for example, so let's say this is the one factory of that bankrupt company. So if you just liquidate it, then you can sell it in the market at, let's say, 1 CR. But the resolution planner has approved it that if you follow that resolution plan, you can get 1.61 CR. So that's what it was telling, that you can get 161% of the liquidation value if you follow the resolution plan. Okay. The haircut for creditors relative to the fair value of assets was around 14%, which you can see 100%, 100 minus 86, you'll get something around 14. And then to the admitted claims, it was around 69%. So what do we mean by this? For example, fair value, liquidation value of this factory, resolution plan is only giving you up to 161 percentage of this value and just 86 percentage of, that means minus 14% of the fair value. So that's first thing. Another thing is, which was they were talking about original claims. Original claims are the amount of money that was initially provided by the creditors to this bankrupt company. So that original claims or that original money was somewhere around, let's say, some original claim value. And as per the data, what we are receiving is that with respect to original value, the haircut is 69%. That means the creditors will only receive 31% of the amount which they initially gave to the company. Haircut is the amount of money that you are accepting to not, accepting that you will not be paid. And the remaining amount is what you will get. Any confusion till now to anyone with respect to all the key technological terms as well as what is happening in the insolvency and bankruptcy code? किसी को अभी कोई दिक्कत, किसी को कोई चीज समझ नहीं आया तो पूछो. All clear? चलिए. Now these were the basic things. Apart from that, one of the major important thing for you to remember from exam perspective is this trend, which is that out of the 12 large accounts referred by the Reserve Bank of India for resolution, 10 have been successfully resolved. What do we mean by that? That 12 large accounts which were responsible for majority of NPAs in the overall banking system were referred by RBI to the board. So based on these 12, 10 companies' resolution has been approved, which is a very good sign, which tells us about the efficacy of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. Okay? Chaliye. Now let's move on to understand other aspects of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. So because of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, the forex hedging by firms has been taken a increase. For example, the research shows that the likelihood for currency mismatch in the corporate sector has reduced after India's bankruptcy reform. That means companies are taking care of their external commercial borrowing, which means how can a company which has taken a loan, external commercial borrowing in dollars, hedge the currency risk? Anyone wants to try? पहले तो ये आपको पता होना चाहिए कि currency risk exists whenever you take loan that is denominated in dollars, because you also have to pay the loan amount as well as interest payments in dollars. But because the dollar rupee rate is, the rupee is depreciating, so whenever you have to repay, you'll have to give more rupee. That means your liabilities will be much more as compared to what you have bought over here, isn't it? So what are the different ways via which you can hedge currency risk? Anyone? So you do take the help of derivatives. That means futures, swaps, interest rate swaps or exchange rate swaps, currency swaps, like that. So this is the research also telling that as per BIS research, the introduction of the new bankruptcy law raised the probability of currency hedging by 13.7% for the firms which originally had a high degree of currency mismatch or the external commercial borrowings. You do not need to remember the percentage per se, just have a basic understanding of the trend that because of the insolvency and bankruptcy reform, the corporates who are having external commercial borrowing are more doing hedging of their external debt. Next is reducing bond credit spreads. What do we mean by that? First of all, in context of corporate sector, what do we mean by the spreads? See, all of you understand corporate bond and government bond, which have same profile of similar nature, they have different yield or different interest rate, you can say, isn't it? Normally in government, what is the interest rate? Somewhere around 6 to 7%. But the similar nature corporate bond, if you will try to buy, you will get the interest rate of somewhere around 9 to 10%. Because this is, the investor finds such type of bonds a little bit risky rather than the government bond. So the difference between the government bonds interest rate and whatever interest rate your corporate bond is giving, this is what we call spread. So whenever the spread increases, what can you tell whether the investor will find the corporate bond more risky or less risky? The more spread increases, whether the bond is risky or non-risky, can anyone tell? Abhishek, main points for NABARD is basically you try to find out all the areas which are having relevance with respect to NABARD syllabus. For example, rural financial institutions, RRBs we talked about, agriculture, isn't it? All those things becomes important for NABARD. First of all, tell me guys, आपके सामने सामने सब चीज है, स्प्रेड बढ़ाओगे तो कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड ज्यादा रिस्की हुआ ना कि नहीं हुआ? बिकॉज द मोर यू इंक्रीज द स्प्रेड, दैट मीन्स इसके ऊपर की वैल्यू बहुत ज्यादा हो जाएगी, मतलब 11-12 आप बॉन्ड में तभी खरीदोगे बिकॉज यू फाइंड दिस बॉन्ड मच मोर रिस्की, isn't it? So just understand this relationship because then you will understand the point that is mentioned in the economic survey, which says reducing bond credit spread. That study highlights because of the IBC, the credit spread for bond issued by the non-financial firms compared to the bonds issued by the finance firms has reduced. However, there is one major issue with respect to the corporate bond market. That corporate bond market is highly skewed towards high rated bonds, which account for more than 85% of all issuance. That means in equity market, for example, you see a different type of companies. For example, you have large cap, which is much more secure. Then you also have small cap and even penny stocks also you have, which are highly risky. But in corporate bond market, 85% of the bonds that you will find over there are highly rated. That means there is very less issuance of low rated bonds. That means, or you can say risky bonds. So इनका भी major return you're already defining. Is this clear? So this number is again very much important. 85% of the all issuances, highly important from exam perspectives. Please make sure that you remember this. Next is in terms of exports also, that because of the bankruptcy reform, Okay, the exports have also increased because of increased access to credit, because most of the companies came out of financial constraints because of the resolution, and now they could have easy access to credit afterwards. So this is what are the various benefits of insolvency and bankruptcy. Okay, so you, apart from generic benefits that you can get easily, try to write these specific benefits with respect to the data that is provided within the economic survey. This will fetch you with huge marks. Objective के साथ साथ this will help you in descriptive as well. ठीक है? Now IBC and National Company Law Tribunal, उसके बारे में देख लेते हैं, that what has been the evolution of this National Company Law Tribunal has been. So if you see with respect to IBC laid down a time limit of 180 days from the date of admission for closure of a insolvency process. You know, there was also this provision of 90 days extension if the creditors agreed. मतलब उन्होंने साफ बोला कि 180 दिन के अंदर आपका कोई भी केस आया उसको सुलटा के आप आगे बढ़िए. बट मान लीजिए किसी कारणवश वो केस बढ़ नहीं पा रहा है तो यू हैव 90 डेज एक्स्ट्रा, तो 270 दिन के अंदर खत्म करो उसको. But when the practical applications happened, resolution professionals were not able to make resolution plans that were acceptable to all stakeholders. So the time limit with respect to within which you have to complete that resolution plan, that was extended to 330-day outer limit. Okay. So this is the latest limit within which you have to complete those resolution. But still we found various issues. For example, current evidence shows that 1068 corporate insolvency resolution professionals which have plans, which have yielded resolution plans, they took an average of 582 days for conclusion. तो ये थोड़ा इससे भी एक्स्ट्रा जा रहा है. So this is what the reality is. Okay, so make sure that you remember these 2 days effectively. So in order to strengthen NCLT, which is National Company Law Tribunal, 30 courts and 16 benches were functioning, headed by president and 31 each of judicial and technical members. NCLT has also quite notably adjudicated 34,000 cases, okay, which is close to 98% adjudication and disposed of 29,000 cases. So just remember here the bold things, nothing else. ये absolute figure याद करने की जरूरत नहीं है. Just remember the percentage value as well as the static information of how much, you know, board members are there. And this delays in admission is also one such problem. That with respect to, you know, when you're taking an application within the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, it takes around 468 days. ये देख लो. पहले देखो, पहले तो केवल टेक्निकली बोला जाता है कि that you have to take within 14 days you have to you know, submit an application. The application you submit, that should have been accepted by the board within 14 days. However, if you see the real life situation, what is happening is the average time for admission of 153 applications by operational creditors was 468 days, which is very huge. In financial year 22, it was 650 days for 207 applications. So you can imagine how many days it takes for an application to get submitted over there. Okay, so insolvency and bankruptcy code, anyone, any issue, किसी को कोई दिक्कत, please ask. No issue? Chaliye, now let's talk about capital markets. So first of all of you tell me, what is the primary use of capital markets? Capital market की क्या जरूरत है? Anyone? Why do we need capital markets in the first place? what does capital market do? It tries to mobilize the household savings, or what we call financialization of household savings, and then try to give that money to corporates so that they can utilize this money to further create more jobs, further create more economic activity. So it is a win-win situation. Okay, so within capital markets, there are two type of sub-markets. First is primary market. In primary market, what happens? In primary market, the companies issues the stocks or shares of their company for the first time. This is what we call IPOs. Then an existing company, if they want to issue more stocks and shares, later on it is what we call follow-on public offers. Okay, जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल यू मस्ट हैव सीन कि पेटीएम ने जो अपना स्टॉक इशू किया था, ये सबसे लेटेस्ट देख लेते हैं, स्विगी हैव वेंट फॉर आईपीओ, तो स्विगी के भी आपको मिले होंगे stocks, isn't it? So if we look at the primary sector or primary market, so what has been the situation? Let's try and understand that. So India's share in the global IPO listings surged to 30% in 2024. So this is very huge because close to 30% of IPOs all across the world that has happened, 30% has been done in India. Total resources mobilization has been 11.1 lakh crore, 5% more than the amount mobilized during previous financial year. पूरे financial year में इतना पैसा mobilize नहीं किया जितना अप्रैल से दिसंबर में कर लिया, उससे भी 5% ज़्यादा. This amounts to 25.6% of the gross fixed capital formation of private and public corporations. The number of IPOs increased by 32.1% to 259. Please make sure that you remember. The amount raised by them also tripled. Okay, absolute figure se zyada, you just remember this. And the average IPO deal size rose to 2124 crore. Highly important this value is. Please make sure that you remember this. ये सारी values again, ठीक है, average size, tripling, percentage, these are important. ठीक है, highly important this chapter is, again, SEBI as well as for RBI. So normal IPO के case में it is 2124. With respect to small and micro enterprise and medium enterprises, it is 39 crores. Now the preferred equity fundraising mechanism for corporates during financial year 25 is qualified institutional placement, not players. Okay. So in this case, 11.4% share in the total capital raised. So qualified institutional placement क्या होता है? That means you are directly issuing the stocks to the main institutions within the country. For example, domestic institutional investors like LIC, like pension funds, all these are DIs. And resource mobilized through rights issue. Rights में क्या होता है? That just like follow-on public offer, after the stock that has already been issued, the company again give rights. The right is, this right is giving you the right to buy more stocks of the same company at the price at which they have launched it. Okay, but no obligation with respect to it कि आपको कोई obligation नहीं है कि आपको खरीदना ही खरीदना है. You can also sell the right to anybody else. So this is with respect to the primary markets. Any confusion to anyone? Please ask. किसी को कोई दिक्कत? No issue? Chalo. Now let's move on to the corporate debt market. In corporate debt market, the value of corporate bond issuance stood at 7.3 lakh crore. The average monthly issuance is 80,000 crores or 0.8 lakh crore. And preferred channel for corporate also remains the same, which is private placement. 99.1% they have utilized for private placement. That means market में list करने की बजाय they have directly given the corporate bonds to the domestic institutional investors. ठीक है? In contrast to the equity market, the debt market in India remain undercapitalized, which is but obvious because see, 0.9% of the corporate bonds is being listed in the corporate bond market. तो retail investors का participation तो है ही नहीं, तो capital आएगा कहाँ से? How will the capital will come? You are directly dealing with the private placement, you are directly giving it to the institutions, then how will retail investors will try to put money? That is also a major question. As a percentage of GDP, the corporate bond market is only 18% in India, as compared to 80% in Korea and 36% in China. Again, very important. The market for corporate bond comprises high-end bonds with 97% of the corporate bond issuances. So this is what I was telling you about previously, that the corporate bond market is skewed towards only those type of bonds which are highly rated. तो मैंने बताया था ना, low rated वाले bonds है ही नहीं, तो वही highly rated bonds हैं. So highly rated bonds are mostly concentrated in these top 3 rating categories, which is AAA, AA+ and AA. There are no corporate bonds which are less than this rating. So what does this tell you? Not all companies are issuing these corporate bonds. इस तरीके की rating कौन पा सकता है? Those companies which are already highly established, like Reliance, like all other big companies. छोटी कंपनी कोई जाएगी कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड इशू करने? उसको तो कोई देगा भी नहीं. They'll give them the rating of C or let's say BBB or BB, something like that. So in this manner, you can also say that the corporate bond market is also not equitable. In financial year 24, the public placement of the corporate bonds stood at 19,000 crore against the private placement of 8,38,000 crores. What does this tell? Limited retail participation. तो साफ साफ बोल दिया कि रिटेलर नहीं है, तो फिर सही बात है, it will always remain undercapitalized. Why do you think equity market is much more capitalized? क्योंकि retail participation is very huge because of the advent of brokers like Zerodha, Grow and all these different platforms. ठीक है? And if we focus on the sectoral trends, so what do we see? The financial services sector dominates the issuance of corporate bond at nearly 60% of the total. That means majority of the companies that are issuing these corporate bonds are related to BFSI sector, banking, financial services sector. So mostly NBFCs, mostly banks, all these entities. Okay. Next is outside financial services, real estate and power generation supply comprise the rest. So you can imagine majority of the corporate bond is being issued by only these 3 sectors, and that too majorly by financial services. Consequently, sectors like manufacturing, non-energy infrastructure sector is very much small. और जब आप देखो manufacturing की capacity, until unless you increase, the country will not be able to increase the per capita income. So you need industry in the manufacturing sector. From April to December, 16,456 crores were raised by real estate investment trusts. This is also another information. Again, reasons behind lack of liquidity in the corporate bond market. If liquidity has to enter, problems such as entry cost, information asymmetry and absence of secondary market must be addressed. So these 3 are the major issues, and everything is highly dependent upon the practice of privately placing the corporate bonds with the big institutions. Until unless you improve retail investment, these problems will never be solved. Because if you invest it in, provide the issuance in the open market where the retailers can also invest, the companies naturally have to, reduce the entry cost. They also have to disclose everything. So information asymmetry will also decline and secondary market will also flourish. तो बस एक सिंपल सी चीज है, उसको ठीक करना है, but not they are doing. ठीक है, I hope all of you understand that how with respect to increasing its issuance in the open market for retail investors to participate, how that activity can solve all these problems. ये तो आप सब लोगों को क्लियर हो गई, किसी को कोई दिक्कत? चलिए, next is insurance and pension funds cannot be invested in bonds that are lower than AA rated. This effectively crowds out small players in the corporate bond market. So this also I was telling you about that. For example, corporate bonds and insurance companies and pension funds, they are not allowed to invest in bonds, corporate bonds that are rated below AA. तो जितने भी नीचे वाली छोटी छोटी कंपनीज हैं उनको वैसे भी नहीं मिलेगा. So that is also another issue. Liquidity is also bottled through regulations that prevent provident fund from investing in corporate bonds for more than 3 years. तो पैसा भी नहीं है, 3 साल से ज्यादा के बॉन्ड में आप पैसा लगा ही नहीं सकते. Moreover, insurance funds are not allowed to invest in debt issued by private companies. तो ये और रेगुलेशन के चक्कर में पैसा नहीं डाल सकते. तो all these are the major reasons because of which the corporate bond market is not liquid. Please make sure that you remember this, not only from phase 1, phase 2, but also for interview perspective as well. Interview में अगर आपसे पूछ लिया गया कि corporate bond market क्यों इतना flourish नहीं कर रहा है as compared to the equity market, so you prepare accordingly. चलिए, and this is the last thing that we'll try to do in today's session, which is the secondary market. In secondary market, what happens is that all those shares that have been already issued and brought in the overall market, now they are being traded amongst different participants. So this is what happens in secondary market. So secondary market, Indian stock market moderated since 2024. Nifty also declined. However, it gave a return of 4.6% return. इसमें से कुछ याद करने की जरूरत नहीं है. Just let it be because this is again a dynamic topic. It keeps on changing. ठीक है? So just have an understanding that what is happening in the secondary market. Okay, so recently Nifty only gave 4.6% return in local currency, and if you see all the big markets and their return in US dollars, so Hong Kong's return is 22.2%, USA's NASDAQ 17.9%, Singapore, and then South Africa. What are the long-term trends? On long-term basis, Indian market have been among the best performing markets, they are saying. So number 1, US NASDAQ, US Dow Jones, and third, Nifty 50. Please make sure that you remember this. ये important है because it is talking about the longer term horizon returns of the Indian market. तो ये एक बार देख लेना. इसमें top 3 players. And then is China's Shanghai Composite Indices. Reasons for positive performance of Nifty 50: strong profitability growth, rapid traction of digital finance infrastructure, expanding investor base, and substantial reforms in the products and processes. Simple सी बात है, because the investor base is increasing because of the access of, stock market being made very easy by the platforms like Zerodha as well as Grow, isn't it? Second thing is that, the reforms done by the government, especially with respect to various sectors that have freed those sectors in terms of economic activity that they do, this led to expansion as well as further profitability of various companies, जिसकी वजह से stock performance और बढ़ रहा है. तीसरी चीज, that overall digital financial infrastructure as well as other logistical infrastructure have also increased the money multiplier within the economy. Then we also have India's weight in the Morgan Stanley Emerging Market Index reached a new high of 20% in July 2024. Okay, so India's share is third highest after China and Taiwan. So this is another thing which you guys need to remember from exam perspective. बहुत important है. Then on 23rd May, total market cap of BSE listed stock closed above the US 5 trillion milestone for the first time. This is also important. And this is the ranking of select economies in terms of market cap to nominal GDP. US is at the top, Japan, and then India. So please make sure that you remember this. Rankings को मत भूलना, बाकी सब तो ठीक है. So rise in investor participation in capital markets, जिसके बारे में हम लोग बात कर ही जा रहे हैं, because of the platforms and how they have provided access. So the period since the pandemic has seen a surge in individual and household participation in capital markets. First is through direct trading, second is through mutual funds. Reasons for greater participation: healthy corporate earnings, strong fundamentals, efficient, robust technology, depository system, trust garnered by mutual fund ecosystem. The number of demat accounts as of now is 18.5 crores. Very important figure. Increased by 33% from previous year. Individual investor share turnover is 35.6%, and unique investors with demat account 11.5 crores. Okay, so these are the values that is highly important for you to remember. So we'll end this session. In the next class, we'll try to finish up mutual funds, insurance, pension, and this whole chapter will be finished. Chaliye. If you have any question, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we'll wind up this session. ठीक है, मैं इसको स्लो इसलिए करा रहा हूँ so that आप लोग साथ क्लास के साथ साथ करते इसको फिनिश कर दो. ठीक है, ज़्यादा डेटा का आप लोगों के ऊपर बर्डन ना पड़े. ओके, इसीलिए मैं सारी चीज़ें बड़े धीरे धीरे करा रहा हूँ, बिकॉज दिस चैप्टर इज अगेन वेरी मच इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर आरबीआई. धीरे धीरे करो, नोट्स बनाते चलो एंड फिनिश इट ऑफ. बाद में इकोनॉमिक सर्वे उठाना ना पड़े आपको बाद में भी, इन अप्रैल, मई और जून, whenever you require economic survey, so you try to finish it up whenever we are doing the classes only. Okay, chalo, all the best guys, and keep revising these data.